Hi, this is Scott Garibay. Today we're going to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and we're going to talk about how Wizards and Hasbro, Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro, have really brought Dungeons & Dragons to its greatest point of success today, and what is one of the key aspects of their success. And that key aspect is restraint. I want to talk about the restraint that Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro have really delivered to make Dungeons & Dragons something exceptional and something really special. So let's talk about it. So one, I just want to say it again, just in case anybody's not clear. Hasbro has been dramatically better of a publisher for Dungeons & Dragons than TSR ever was. It's not even debatable. So there have been 3 publishers for Dungeons & Dragons in the 47 years that it's existed. TSR, Wizards of the Coast, and Hasbro, right? Wizards of the Coast had it for 2 years, 1997 to 1999, right? And so they're really a little bit of an anomaly, and we can ignore them. And to understand, Wizards of the Coast is in the mix, but Hasbro is the real deal. Hasbro is what is actually the actual publisher for Dungeons & Dragons today. And so let's talk about what Hasbro has done. The biggest thing that Hasbro has done is restraint. So just so you're aware, the entire team that creates Dungeons & Dragons is about 50 people today. Maybe it's reached up to 75 people, right? And I know that just from the articles I've read and from photos that you'll see come out from Wizards of the Coast headquarters and that kind of thing. The annual, company, picnic, and they take a picture, and, it's less than 100 people. It's 50 to 75 people. Now, what you got to realize is back in the 90s, late 80s, early 90s, TSR had the numbers up to 600 people, with people in the company who had company cars, right? If you're designing modules about goblins, what on earth do you need a company car for, right? So one of the things is Hasbro has put incredible restraint on the business itself and said, listen, we're going to keep this, we're going to keep the amount of people who are making Dungeons & Dragons tight and light, so that this isn't a strain on, so that Dungeons & Dragons isn't a strain on Hasbro. It brings in more money than, a lot more money than it costs to make, right? And honestly, that is what TSR failed at. That is what Gary Gygax failed at. That is what the Bloom Brothers failed at. That is what Lorraine Williams fixed, right? And actually, she only fixed it briefly because the same issue, less money coming in than going out, came back and totally appeared again. We were dealing with the exact same issue as late as the early 90s, right? So it was an issue. It was always an issue. TSR never had the ability to make sure that Dungeons & Dragons made more money than it cost to make, right? And frankly, that should not be hard, right? That's one of the great things about Dungeons & Dragons is it's just print, right? You just print the books and the game is there. That's all you need, right? So you need writers, you need layouts, you need artists, you need printers. And honestly, when you're talking people laying cable across an ocean, those costs are ridiculously low, right? And it should be very containable. And TSR never did that. And Hasbro has shown incredible restraint. So under TSR, there were employee counts as high as 600 people, and today that number is less than a sixth, right? It might be it's close to a tenth. Could be a tenth of what it was under frankly bad management for TSR. Restraint. Here's another area where they have shown incredible restraint. They've shown incredible restraint on what does Dungeons & Dragons, what does Wizards of the Coast, what does Hasbro publish when it comes to tabletop role-playing games. And they got really crazy in the 80s, 90s, and maybe in the early but actually, you know what? This all stopped in the early 2000s, right? In the early 2000s, Hasbro slammed the gauntlet down. They were like, Dungeons & Dragons is Dungeons & Dragons. It is the main focus of Wizards of the Coast when it comes to tabletop role-playing games. They swept the board. They dropped the Star Wars license, and they have never, ever, published tabletop role-playing games beyond Dungeons and Dragons. They're like, we are not, and I will say it right now, right? Starfinder was a mistake. I love Starfinder. It's a beautiful game. It's delightful. From a commercial perspective, it was a mistake. It took a huge amount of resources to build for Paizo, right? It's got a tiny little, subgroup of people who like it. It's probably one of the best. There's no question. I think Starfinder is by far the best independent science fiction game that exists. No two ways about it, right? And it was a waste of time, right? Paizo didn't realize people don't like science fiction tabletop role-playing games. Leave that to itch.io, right? Like, science fiction tabletop role-playing games are scrub. They get a fraction of the sales of even the low-end fantasy games, right? People just don't like them at scale, right? And I would love to see like a Starfinder, Dungeons and Dragons. I would love to play a science fiction based game that links to Dungeons and Dragons in the future. Exactly the way Warhammer links to Warhammer 40K. Exactly the way Pathfinder links to Starfinder, right? But there's no question. This restraint, this carefulness, this caution, right? From Wizards of the Coast, from Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro, specifically Hasbro, right? I really think these decisions come from Hasbro. This restraint from Hasbro has made the game economically strong, right? And it is not easy. No, saying no is not easy. It's so easy to say yes, pile on more crap, and just like never really protect the brand. And that's just not the case. They have been so careful, so protective of the brand, and it's working, right? So and it's telling no to people like me, real fans who are like, yeah, come on, let's do it. And my excitement for a science fiction game that links directly to Dungeons and Dragons is immense, right? Earth Dawn to Shadowrun. So many companies have done this, right? And Hasbro's like, no, we're not doing this. We're not wasting artists. We're not wasting layout people. We're not wasting writers. We're not wasting focus, right? And they have been proven 100% correct. The other thing that I think they're very careful on, and I don't, they've made some decisions. I don't like those decisions, but I think when you look at it from a commercial perspective, it was right. The OGL, the Open Game License, right? They pulled that back. They kept the Open Game License they kept the Open Game License, right? They opened it up in 3rd edition. They had a huge success with it in 3rd edition. But they realized that it was starting to, I think the reason they rolled it back was it was starting to damage the brand. And there was confusion about what Dungeons & Dragons was. Was it the pure gold content coming out of Wizards of the Coast, or was it a bunch of splat book nonsense being published by a lot of other people? I love the period of innovation that we got, and it was really special and really valuable. But here we are, right? And I think we can say with certainty that they there's no question. They pulled the OGL back in 4th edition, and they have massively pulled the OGL back in 5th edition. And basically, they're still letting people create content in the Dungeons & Dragons world, but it is stamped with scrub now. Like, DM's Guild is not equal to, even remotely considered equal, and it's not handled equal. So the OGL has been pulled back, right? I hate that decision from Dungeons & Dragons. I wish that the OGL was as strong today as it was in 3rd. It's not, okay? But commercially, there's just no two ways about it. That restraint was incredibly valuable. I think restraint is really the key to what has allowed Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro to really make Dungeons & Dragons a commercial success today and make it commercially safe today. That's a big deal. All that's my opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.